Well, good evening, everybody. It's 6:01, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and to talk more about the district plan and its opening. I'm noticing names here that have been here for 3 nights in a row with the administration. Boy, we appreciate your soldiering up and spending 3 nights with us to talk about things. So we appreciate you being here, and a lot of folks here for a couple nights. So we appreciate your interest in what we're doing and what we're looking at toward the beginning of the school year that is there. So tonight it is, I am the guy behind the curtain this time around. Thank you to both Ms. Adams and Ms. Vieira for the wonderful job that they had done the past 2 nights in sharing with the plan and program that is going on here for the school and for what we hope to have into place for next, for this upcoming school year. A lot of moving parts, a lot of changes really often. There was a lot of movement last year when we first had to close down in March, and it feels faster this year around. But we're going to go through tonight some of the pieces that there were a lot of questions on from the previous meetings. Like the previous meetings, we will have some opportunities to, there will be some opportunities to ask questions. The chat is available. Please use that to put any questions into the chat, and periodically we'll stop to answer those questions unless the question goes with the flow of the conversation, and then we'll answer those questions there. And of course, the COVID info at Salem CSD is always available for you to use to put questions in, and you've been doing that, and we've worked really hard to get back to you on a regular basis and in a timely manner to give you the information you need so you know what's going on with the school and what you have to be able to make decisions for you and your family. So for tonight, on tonight's agenda, we are going to talk about really 5 things: transportation, health screenings and protocols, ventilation, briefly, meals, and technology. Just brief updates on those. Some of them have instructional connections, some of them do not. A lot of them have to do with the regulations and requirements that we are now required to do to open school and for the school year, at least for the time being. So as we get started, please be sure that you are muted so we don't hear your conversations or your fans running or anything that's going on in your home. And of course, again, the chat box is available for questions, and COVID info at salemcsd.org for questions. So without much further ado, let's talk about transportation. In transportation, right now the bus routes, we're planning on looking similar to what they were last year. As for the route structure, we still have some work to do, but right now that's the plan, that whatever your bus route was last year will be your bus route this year. The big difference being is what we have to do with social distancing on the bus and reducing the population density on the buses. What that is going to do on any bus run is, in some buses, it's likely to actually speed up the run, so people may be there sooner. In some cases, it might slow it down depending on the number of pickups that are in place. So it's the other part with the bus and the transportation pieces is how we're going to drop folks off and have folks pick up. There's some changes there, and we're going to talk about kind of our first thinking on what that will look like. So on this slide is really kind of the golden rules, if you will, of returning to school under COVID-19. That is reducing population density, it's promoting social distancing, it's promoting respiratory hygiene, and promoting hand hygiene. Those are the 4 golden rules. Those are the things that help keep everybody safe, and they apply here in the school, and they're also going to apply in the bus. So to reduce the population density on buses, we need to ensure that we can't put 66 kids on a bus anymore. That's our biggest bus. That's what they can handle. We can't put 40 kids onto a bus anymore. At our best, so when we've split the groups between purple and gold, we have that's going to help us with the number of kids we have to bring into school. We talked the past 2 nights about promoting bringing kids into school. That's going to help. We talked about it, promoting having kids be able to drive into school. That's going to help with the distancing as well. It will create some other challenges, which we'll talk about in a second, but for the buses piece, it'll be very helpful. Once we get that density reduced off the bus, then we have to maintain that social distancing on the bus, especially when we're looking at loading and unloading and how they're onto the buses and then how they staggered and then how they come into school, but also where they're seated. On the right-hand side of this picture, I hope you can see this enough. It's two possible layouts that we're looking at. This top one that I'm circling in the magic red ball here is one model. This model allows for the social distancing here. It talks about with shielding. We do not intend to have shielding on our buses, which means if we do this model, there is no social distancing this way, which means masks would need to be worn at all times on the bus with the face coverings. There is some conversation about the seats because they're higher, with students seated in the bus correctly. Does that act as a shield? We are still getting guidance to that, whether that happens or not, but this is going to be probably the maximum opportunity we have for bringing kids in. And this example here is talking about 24 students. In our buses, we talk about fitting 3 kids per seat. So it's 6 students per row. There's 66 passenger buses, which means in this format for our biggest buses, it would be 22 students. In this version, with the no shielding piece, this maintains the social distancing both kind of across the bus and also from front to back. So here you can see how there's this zigzag pattern across, because that maintains the social distance here and then maintains the social distance here. In doing that, it's closer to 8 students onto this bus, and that's about the same it would be for us in ours. For us, I think it's actually closer to 11 because it's a 66 passenger bus. So 22 in this model, 11 into this model. And a lot of this is going to depend on how many students we have to transport. So if you are going to plan on transporting your children all year, please do contact your principal's office so we know, and we will plan for that. However, if it works out that you need the bus, let us know. We will have a bus available for you so your children can get to school. The social distancing does not end on the bus when we get them off the bus. When we load kids into this bus, we're likely to have assigned seating of some nature. So the first kid's on, we'll move to the back, and then we'll load from the back forward. And then when we're unloading the bus, we'll unload from the front and then work our way backward. That way we can reduce or eliminate any crossover from the students in the back to moving to the front. There are a couple challenges there. For example, kids and breakfast. There may be a couple hiccups that we will work out and work on. But right now the plan is load them. When we load them in, we move them to the back first. And then when we unload, we start at the front and then work our way backward. That way to reduce the amount of how close kids can be to each other. So masks need to be on when we cannot social distance. That's getting on and off the bus, that's entering into the school. And we are talking about the availability of hand sanitizer and of course hand washing being the gold standard of hand hygiene. There is some regulations, questions now about hand sanitizer in the bus. Some places have said yes, some places have said no there, but we're looking at when we do our check-in stations having hand sanitizer available when you walk into the school at the morning. So this is kind of part 1 on transportation. This is how we plan on picking everyone up, getting them on the bus, and then getting them to school. Part 2 is dropping them off at school. We're going to do things again, this is a first blush, very interested in your feedback onto this. It's solidly not perfect. There's a lot of work that we're looking at here. But once we have kids at the school end, the plan is to actually use both the circle at the high school end and the bus loop for the drop off of all of our students, whether that's a bus drop off or whether that's a parent drop off. So for the circle will be used for 7 through 12. High school students will be delivered first from our buses. So our buses will come to campus. We will drop them off here in a staggered format so getting off the bus and getting in, so we don't have too much social density when we're coming into the school building. Buses will then come and park out in front of the school. Now, this is major change number one. We're going to ask folks not to park in the front of the school. We know that is a major change, but what we're looking to do is we need to have a staging area for our buses to allow parents to use the bus loop. So if we have parents parking out in front of the school, we don't have anywhere to stage our buses because we need parents to be able to come into here and we need parents to be able to come into here. So we're going to look to use this as staging space and ask folks not to park here. We know we have folks that park over here by the church and behind the Verizon building, but if you're driving your child to school, we're going to ask you to drive them in the bus loop to get into there. Elementary students will be brought in and dropped off into here. We're going to have two drop-off spots, one here in the breezeway, which we're all familiar with, but also one here at the back of the school. By that time, I'm knocking on wood, the building project, my office will be completed and my office will be located back here. So we will have an entrance in here that will have a screening available for people to come into the building, for students to come into the building. So when we bring folks in, we're likely to have our parents, our walk-ups, and our drop-offs happen here. Everyone is going to go into the main building this year. Because of the building project, the primary building is empty and will be all year long. So pre-K, first grade, second grade, and a couple other classrooms, no one is here. Everyone is going to be here in the building. The first floor is going to be your pre-K, K, and first grade. Upstairs is going to be your second grade, third grade, and fourth grade. Fifth and sixth, we're moving over to the high school end, and they're going to be over in this location. But everyone pre-K through 6, we're going to have come into here. We'll talk about meals in a second for lunch and breakfast. And then they'll be able to go to their classrooms through this entrance. Buses, we're thinking of dropping off here. That way they can come in this direction, and then that way they are coming through here and we're not crossing too many people at one entrance at one time. The second major change we're talking about when we bring folks to drop off to school is about not walking your children to their classroom. It happens a lot and often and has for a very long time for pre-K and kindergarten, and it even goes into our upper elementary levels. Recommendations and requirements require us to limit the number of people who are in the school building, to limit the amount of exposure everyone has to COVID-19 and to keep everyone safe. To that end, we're going to ask parents who are bringing their children in, they're going to drop them off here, and then we'll take over. We'll take your student, we'll get them inside, we'll make sure they're safe, we'll make sure they get to their classrooms, and we'll make sure they have a great day in the beginning. It's going to be a tough adjustment, moms and dads, but one we are confident that we can adjust to into the changes that there are. So major changes here in the drop-offs into the bus staging area, and for not walking students into their classrooms. Also, the other major change of parents asking them to actually drive up the loop, drop off their students, and then exit back out. We do plan on having some type of traffic control set up in the beginning. We're working out some of those details. So that is the basics of coming to school. We went to your house, we've got your children, how we plan on getting them and getting them here, how we plan on dropping them off at the school and getting them into the building. We're going to go through our school day. Ms. Vieira and Ms. Adams kind of talked about what that school day is going to look like. And school day is done. So now it's time to bring students home. So to bring them home, we're going to be staggering exiting the school. We're going to use multiple exits. Walkers and riders, we're going to ask to come out the front of the building. 5th and 6th grade classrooms are going to be here. We're going to ask them to walk out right here. 7 through 12 kids, when it's their turn, we're going to ask them to walk out this direction unless they're in these lots and in which case we'll have them walk out this way, or if they're in these lots, we'll ask them to walk out this way. Pre-K through 4 will walk out one of these doors. 7 through 12, depending on where they are. So parents, when we're picking up, notice here, my thing is in the way, but notice how the no parking zone is gone. When it comes to pickup time, this will return to your staging area to pick up your children, just like it always has been. We'll put our buses back here again, just like they always have been. So the afternoon will look a lot like what we're used to, with the difference of the buses will pick up here first, and then we'll pick up elementary, and then we'll bring your students home. At least for September, we are not going to have a secondary run. There isn't any athletics going on. We need to get some planning done. We need to make sure we can get everything through we need to get through. If athletics continues, then we'll have some conversations. We are hoping at some point to be able to have some type of scheduled and controlled after school help, maybe once in a purple or gold group. That's aspirational. We're hoping to make that happen. It's still part of a conversation, just so you know. So for the folks that are driving themselves, notice in both of these spots right now, I have staff and student parking for both places. This is still a conversation. Normally, this is student parking. We have staff who park here in the circle, and the rest of our staff who park over here. The problem is no one's going to park in the circle this year because we're using it as a bus loop. So it's not going to be available. The other part is we don't want to have too much population density of students when they're coming into school at any of our one parking lots. So by sharing parking lots, we may be able the teachers have to be in earlier than the students do. So that will help limit naturally some of our density concerns in the parking lots waiting to come into the school. There's some more conversations that need to go on, and we'll have those. For our drivers at the high school, it's important that you do get, as Ms. Adams said yesterday, please do make sure you get registered so we know your vehicle is yours. Because without knowing if you're parked over here or parked over here, we're going to want to know whose car's on campus so we can find the owner if they left their keys in, or if they've left their lights on, or if they've taken up 4 parking spots, or anything else that may be important for them in their car. That is kind of the end of the transportation section. I don't see any questions in chat yet. Does anyone have any questions? If so, please, please put something into the chat. You're welcome to unmute, if you will, and ask a question. I'll give you just a minute to do that, and then we'll move on to our next section.
Temperature stuff and whatnot.
Will we do screenings before they get on the bus? At this point, we do not plan on doing screenings before they get onto the bus, and here is why. There is a custody issue or concern about student safety when they get to the bus stop. So student is at the bus stop. The student is at the bus stop. The bus driver picks up the student. If we were to test the student at that location and that student has a fever, then we have to do something with that student. If there isn't a parent available, if there isn't a guardian available or a caretaker available, we would then still have to put that student onto the bus and bring them to school, and then be able to find who we need to find to be able to carry our route. We will have some type of protocol into place to make sure that maintain safety best we can as precautionary measures that are in place. What we're asking everyone what we will continually ask everyone to do is, if moms and dads or caregivers, guardians, grandparents, daycare providers, that if you have a sneaking suspicion that your child may have a fever, is to take the temperature, and if that temperature is at 100, keep them home. Give us a call, let us know, call your family physician, and let them know you have a child with 100 fever that needs to be seen. That is where we are working right now. We are going to do those screenings right as folks enter they enter the building to prevent from moving in and forward. We of course have communication means, whereas if the bus driver has a concern, that we'll be able to intercept that bus before we get them onto campus. When will the parking passes be available to fill out? I believe a contact to Ms. Adams at any given time will be able to get that. She was working on a PDF format to mail out, or be accessible on the web page. But let's say, I believe just a simple phone call to her office will be able to get that passed and get those arrangements made.
Dr. Glover, can I just add one thing?
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Adams.
Sure. So Miss Patrick and I we're updating the form, and we intend to post the form on the website with the process next week. So that way we're trying to minimize the traffic in and out of the building. Because of the construction, the access is very limited to our office. So we anticipated we'll put it up next week. You can initially mail it back. We'll do some mailing back and forth. And as we get closer, we would hold the parking pass for the students. We'll let you know we received it and give it to them the first day in homeroom. So keep an eye on that. Early next week, we should have that posted on the website. So I just wanted to let you know that we did get some phone calls today and we discussed the process. And also, Dr. Glover, there was a question regarding the BOCES transport on there as well. I don't know if you would like to answer that or if you would like me to.
I can answer it. Thanks. The one that says, is this the right time? And the answer is yes. So Marcy, go ahead and ask your question. What the BOCES transport is.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, so assuming that BOCES for the high schoolers is happening and going the same way it usually does, my question is, on the 2 days that the students aren't there, how is transportation going to work? Do we get them to the school to get on that bus, or is there some other way?
We're still working out some of those details. For any kid who has a program that needs transportation, we'll get transportation for them. So if it's a case of the buses are still running on those days, right? They're still running 4 days a week. The one day that might be a challenge is on that Friday, and we still have to work out those details. Ms. Adams is still working with the BOCES on that, but there may be times where they end up missing where that is, but depending how it works out, is we're going to do what we can to try to get kids to their program as best we can. A lot of that, Marcy, though, is also we need to be, if we have drivers, if we have buses, because of the number of runs we have to do into the scheduling of what we have in resource availability. So it's still a work in progress, but that's our intent, and we'll do that best we can.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on transportation? Okay, great. If one pops up later, don't be afraid to put it into place. Or of course, you can always email it to the COVID info, the COVID info. Okay, so we've talked about transportation. So we talked about picking the kids up and then getting them here and not getting them back. But the next step after we pick them up and get them to here is about screening those students. We just talked about we're not going to screen them on the buses and some of the reasons why we're not going to do that. But we are going to greet folks at the door, at the circle, at the loop, and back by the gym entrance. We're back by the gym entrance. We are going to have stations set up for those for a quick check. Now, quick check is because we've actually invested in some stations. They are not handheld thermometers like we have been using. These stations are a little more sophisticated in that, and they're also much faster. They can read skin temperature more accurately and within about a second is the setup. They also do some work on their accuracy in measuring what the air temperature is, and they do a bunch of neat stuff, and I won't get into the technical pieces fully. But in the end, it is a more accurate external temperature taking, and it also lets us go through a lot of students quickly. It reads the temperature. We're able to see, okay, is this student at that 100 degrees or not? If that student is underneath that 100 degrees, it's have a great day and on they go, and we can keep moving kids through it at a pretty good rate. If, however, we get to a spot where that student reaches 100 degrees Fahrenheit, then we have some pieces we need to do. And we'll talk about that in a second. The other piece that comes with the screenings is, there's a questionnaire that's also involved. Now, faculty and staff have a different set of rules. They have to come in and they have to be tested out. They have to be temperature checked every day. And then there's a questionnaire that they have to go through every day. Not dissimilar to what you would do at your doctor's office. If you've had to visit your doctor's office since then, they ask you some travel questions, ask you some symptom questions about, where you've traveled. Have you traveled anywhere? Do you have any signs or symptoms of COVID? Or in the past few days. And then we keep track of that information in case we need to do any, contact tracing concerns, or if we have someone who basically fails a test. So we have a student comes in and our poor student has a fever of 100. That student gets sent to an isolation area with the nurse, and we're going to double check that temperature. We know there are false positives and we know there are false negatives. So if a student happens to come through the door and they were running because they're so excited to be at school that they've been running since Garapies, and they ran all the way to the side door to the school bus loop and walked the school bus loop, and they're panting and they finally get themselves under control, but their body temperature is still up, that student might register over 100 because of he's been exercising and his body temperature's gone up. We'll double check that temperature to make sure it's accurate. If it is an accurate temperature, isolation area, the nurse will do that piece. We will contact the family, and then the family will need to come and pick up the child. And then we're going to advise you to go to your family doctor, let them know that's for testing or possible testing for COVID and with the signs and symptoms. And then we'll talk about next steps of what we have to do with that here in a second. So someone comes in, they fail the test, fail in air quotes. We go through a basic second check. We contact the family. We then get that, the family come get that child and then get them to the doctor for testing. We're also required to call the health department when that happens. So there's also a health department requirement that falls into this place. The other piece, what if a student's ill at school? So a student comes into school during the day, checks in just great. Everything's wonderful, great, have a great day at school. And by lunchtime, he looks terrible or she looks terrible and obviously is not feeling well. We take a temperature, that temperature is over 100. Then we go right back through the screening protocol. Make sure it's accurate, contact the parent about going to the doctors, contact the health department, and then we go through the same protocol about when that child can come back. So that's how we get our screenings are basically going to go. Once you get to the screening, you go to your doctor, and your doctor says, no, the son or daughter just has allergies. That's why they're sniffling and sneezing. And when we got to the doctor's office, we took her temperature 3 other times. Temperature came back negative, is under 100 point whatever. And so, no, that's not a case. We need documentation from the healthcare provider that clears from school. The state, I'm going to note this asterisk in a second, and I'll talk about this, but currently the state says we need a negative COVID test and the resolution of the symptoms without intervention for 24 hours. What's that mean? That means that you haven't given your child any medication and they haven't had a fever for 24 hours without medication, or the signs or symptoms that had arisen, those have decreased or they have no longer exist. That's the current regulation that we are being given for coming back to school. Once those criteria met, back you come and we're back into it again. If you go to the doctors, same thing, go get your 100, go to the doctor, Yes, you have 100 fever. Yes, you have those signs and symptoms. They take the test. Yes, your child's positive for COVID-19. Once you're released from isolation, you're able to come back to school if, at least for 10 days, you have been symptom-free since the symptoms have started. You're fever-free for 3 days without any intervention. Otherwise, you haven't taken any medication to suppress the fever, and at least 3 days since the symptoms have improved. The asterisks are there, and it says subject to change because the New York State Department of Health, the New York State Special Education Department have conflicting requirements for these protocols. The community part of this is handled by the Washington County Department of Health. It has a different protocol for the community than has been set up for the schools. They are aware of this, and they're working out more guidance or new guidance or clarifying guidance on what this works. What that works. So to that end, we're going to follow the guidance until the guidance tells us something different. And that is documented, it's cleared from school, negative COVID test, resolution of symptoms. So what happens if they have a headache or migraine with no fever with the protocol? The fever is right now the fever is really kind of the main indicator. If a student walks in with 100 fever, that's kind of the trigger of, okay, protocol starts. Part of this may fall to knowing our students, and luckily we know our students pretty well. So if a student comes in and has a headache and never has a headache ever, just never has a headache ever, and maybe has a couple other symptoms, we might send that student to the nurse anyway, just to be safe, because your son or daughter never has headaches. It's there. Same with just because a student has the sniffles or is sneezing a lot doesn't necessarily mean that would be enough to be okay. We got to get a COVID test for the student. It could be allergies. It's going to be a combination of some things that go into play. But if a student has a fever, that is the trigger for us to follow through. So we're trying to keep this as consistent as possible, but because it's individuals and individual health, we all kind of handle some of the things differently. Remember, COVID has asymptomatic people as well. So some folks may have COVID or had COVID and never shown a symptom ever. So, but these protocols are in place. That is our best. This is what we think best currently on keeping folks safe and healthy when they come into school. Are there any other questions about health screenings and protocols? Whether it's coming into school, whether it's the type of question about if it's just a headache or for there. This is kind of the end of the health screening section. Be happy to entertain any questions there. Okay. Oh, there is. Will the bus drivers have extra masks available? Oh, yes, I said earlier. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to skip you. Yes, we do plan on having extra masks available on buses. We will have extra masks available here at the school that are available in case someone forgets one. If a family is having issues and needs masks because, if it's a financial situation or if there's something else has happened, all they need to do is let their building principal know. We have masks available to be able to help folks out. But yes, drivers will have extra masks available for students if they don't have them. Welcome. Sorry about missing that question earlier. Again, if there are any other questions, still in the chat to the email address. And let's talk about ventilation quickly. I added this in because there have been a couple questions to it. And so I thought it'd be worth just to kind of talk about it really briefly. That's there. I'm not going to stop for questions on this. Just throw them in the chat and I'll answer them as I can. So with the ventilation, the requirement for ventilation for school is maintain adequate code required ventilation, either naturally or mechanically as designed. So basically it's don't rig something up to put more air into the room, but use the things that we have to ensure that there's adequate ventilation in the room. And when the state talks about ventilation, it's talking about outside air mixing with inside air. Now, fortunately, we're spending a lot of money in our building project right now to improve all of these things. Unfortunately, the timing isn't the best. So, because we're still working on it, it's not done. So we're doing a couple things here to increase ventilation to the greatest extent possible is what they recommend. We're going to encourage teachers to keep the windows open, and keep their doors open, cracked, to be able to allow some of that airflow continue through. We are looking at changing the types of filters we use in our in the univents and the heaters, because they exchange air internally too. Unfortunately, they won't be able to go to the HEPA level because the HEPA filters aren't fit to what our univents are. We are looking at, there's supposed to be a simple adapter that works. We are looking at that, remembering that these univents are literally going to be ripped out of the building in a year. It's there, but we're also looking at, since we can't go to HEPA, we're going to go to the next level of filter available that does a better job at filtering air out, and it won't necessarily catch COVID, but it will do a better job of getting better air into the room. And then when added that to the ventilation, will help improve the overall health of the the internal air in the building. On the buses, same idea. Adequate, appropriate ventilation, keep air moving, windows open. Some buses and our safety hatches allow tops to be cracked up like they're a sunroof to allow some airflow to happen into place. So we're going to work to not have folks sit in stale air boxes and work to keep air, fresh air mixing in with current air. Not the idea of just turning a fan on, because that just blows around what's in the room already. The idea is about bringing in fresh air and pushing old air out to keep appropriate ventilation in the room. Can you donate the masks to the school? If you, that would be wonderful, Carol. What you can do is just contact one of the administrators, and or give us a call. I would email us, because tomorrow we're a little light on some folks, or call us on Monday and we can talk about that. And thank you so much for your generosity and your offer. That would be wonderful. I don't think we could ever have enough masks. It's there. So we're going to switch gears to testing and tracing. Testing and tracing is a topic that is important. The governor has, if you've listened to the New York State governor much, he talks about these two things all the time, and believes in them very much, about their ability to keep track and keep lid of any spread of COVID between people. At this time, there is no testing planned to be completed by the school district, and that's per guidance. The New York State Department of Education guidance says is that schools need to get them basically to healthcare professionals and work with the local Department of Health on those protocols. The State Department of Health talks about the schools working with the local Department of Health on protocols and procedures on getting tested for those that need to happen and into place. So while it sounds odd that your hairdresser needs to test every other week in order to keep their shop open for hairdressing, school teachers, school staff are not required to have regular testing at this time. The challenge here is in the type of testing they're doing and the availability of it. Recently, Washington County had been testing 50 individuals a day, and the state has asked them to back off from 50 individuals a day to 30 a week. So the state's even asked the county to back off on the testing it's doing. The county has told us that they're actually referring people to their private healthcare providers in order to get to testing, because it's faster for an individual who wants a test, who needs a test, that their primary care physician is their fastest way to do that, which is why the school is also referring you back to your healthcare provider for that test to go into place. The other challenge on testing is that the amount of time it takes to get back. Testing can take 2 weeks before we get an information back. So we could come in, we could do a test, And that would tell you how you did 2 weeks ago, and you would already be out of date because of the number of people we would run into 2 weeks. So testing is a challenge until we come up with another test. Until we come up with another test that is quicker, that's more cost effective, and more readily available. That's where we kind of stand for testing at this point. If that changes, we will certainly follow whatever the protocols and procedures are into place that are set up for us for schools. On the tracing piece, here is where we will have a little bit more of a stance and a little bit more of an active role. We will coordinate with the Washington County Public Health on contact team tracing. So if we end up with an individual here at the school, a student or faculty or staff or administration who has tested positive, we're likely to get a phone call that we'll call the health department if we discover it. And then we're going to talk about who is that individual near, who are the last contact, who are their peoples, who are those families' names, and we will cooperate fully with the Department of Health so they know who they need to call and contact so they can do the contact tracing pieces that they need to do. There is training available for us. We are going to pursue some of that training in how that works so we have a better understanding of it here. So we're going to be more involved in the tracing piece if it happens, when we have to work with it here. But it's in coordination with the Department of Health of Washington County, and they are going to take the lead that is there. One piece that I'm just going to bring up here is at the bottom of the screen is that we'll let you know if we have a COVID-related case where if we're required to close school or move instructional to remote learning for a longer period of time. So if we have to change our academic day, we'll let you know why that is. And if it's because we had a COVID positive case in the school, we'll let you know. But everyone still has HIPAA protections that are in place. And so for those protections, we aren't going to be able to tell you whom that individual was. So that may be a little frustrating, but that person has privacy rights to the medical piece. We can let you know, and we do this with other things too, right? A little on the less serious side. If there's lice, we say, hey, someone at this grade level has had lice. We don't tell you necessarily more specific than that, so you're aware of it. Similar type of idea, just it's about COVID rather than anything else, just so you have a comparison. That is our limits for us with testing and tracing. I'll stop just briefly here for questions, and certainly in the ventilation too. If the student tests positive for COVID-19, does the remaining children in the class required to get tested and to quarantine also? That's a good question. That is going to depend on many factors, and we are going to lean on the Department of Health for that. If it is a case where it's a student, it's a gold day, and a student is in a classroom and they have been fantastic with wearing their face coverings and maintaining their social distance and working on their hand hygiene and the respiratory hygiene, and so they've done all those things we've asked. We may not have all the children may not be required to be tested, and they may not have to go in any type of quarantine. Secondary, kind of tertiary contact. So if student A is in direct contact with student B is a greater likelihood of possibly going into a quarantine piece. But if student B has some contact with student C, not necessarily so. It really depends on the situation that's there. If we end up having that same classroom and that same student, and they decide just during recess to kind of ignore all those rules and end up having a wrestling match out on the playground, and one of them has COVID, that group's likely to end up in quarantine. That group's likely to end up to have to get testing also. So to that, Joan is kind of dependent on the situation, and we'll follow the health department's lead on that. But it's not an automatic. It's so if a third grader tests positive, then all third grade is out. Not necessarily so. Any other questions on testing and tracing? or ventilation? Okay, let's talk about cleaning and disinfecting. So we already know our faculty, our maintenance and cleaning staff are fantastic. They make this place shine on a daily basis all year long and go above and beyond to make the school, really the pride of the community that it is, and they do wonderful work. And this amount of work that we're going to be faced with is a really big challenge. And I'm very happy that we have the crew that we do because I know they are absolutely up to the task. So based on what our student schedules are going to be, we're going to have a regularly set schedule for certain items to be, cleaned in or disinfected. Bathrooms are going to happen regularly, somewhere around an hour. It's going to depend. The high school is going to have classes every 80 minutes, so it might be once per block period. The elementary school, it might be a little more often. We're going to see how those schedules go, and then regularly throughout the day, we can look at the bathrooms being cleaned as needed 4 or 5 times a day. Normally, they're only done twice. So we're going to be more than doubling the cleaning of the bathrooms for their use. High contact areas, we've been doing high contact areas since March, since actually February, when this all first kind of erupted out. So that's also going to depend on the student schedule, but that's going to be, probably again, every block, every period, we'll hit door handles, we'll get, locker handles and locker combinations into their, through their classes. We'll talk about getting desktops, and we're talking about how to do that and to do that effectively. So all that's going to happen on a regular schedule during the day. And then in the evening, we'll go through and complete the regular cleaning like we normally do. We're going to be cleaning and disinfecting the cafeteria and other large group areas. For the cafeteria, will be between lunches. And on the buses, it'll be after the bus runs. We are going to go through and disinfect and clean there. Playgrounds are only required to clean because they're outside. And the disinfecting isn't as effective there. So the guidance is really only cleaning is required. So we're going to work our way out to clean out our new playground, which is going up very quickly, and it looks great. And then again, on that day between purple and gold groups, we are also going to go in and kind of do that cleaning to make sure that we get desks touched up a little more thoroughly before the next group comes in. On the day where we don't have students, that's where we're going to get serious. We're going to get right back in, and we're going to top to bottom each classroom again, and disinfect each of those places. And so when we do that on a Friday, we can let that set through into the weekend, and give the cleaning products that we use time to work and be effective and kill as many germs and bugs as they need to. So when we come back to Monday, we come back to a clean of school as we possibly can. Anyone have any questions on cleaning and disinfecting? It's going to be a very big schedule. It's going to be a very big task. A lot of it's going to depend on the student schedule, because we're going to be working around that, because it's the students we're looking to protect when we do the cleaning piece. So if a question pops up on this, please put it in the chat. Please send me in an email. But we have very big, we have plans on really being stringent on following the routine and following a schedule to make sure that everyone is safe as best we can. So let's talk about meals briefly. We're going to talk about breakfast and lunch. For the cafeteria in person, I heard a beep. Okay, so for in person, if there's going to be times and opportunities, this is for the older students mainly. The younger students are going to be eating in their classrooms or bringing food to them. But for the older students, we're reducing to a single line. We are required to feed all of our students. So that means we have to feed everyone who's here, and we have to provide some type of meals for everyone who is not here. So we need some more setup space and some more workspace to get all that work done. So we're going to be reducing out to one line. cafeteria we talked about yesterday is going to have about 40 seats in it. Everyone's socially distanced in the cafeteria and in the spaces for their lunchtime. We are going to look to reduce the amount of cash to reduce the exchange between people. So we're going to ask folks if they need to replenish their child's accounts to submit a check or money order, so we can put the money in that way, or go to k12paymentcenter.com. Put in then there you can go in, you can find your children, you can link them to your account, and then you can put the money in electronically. There is a small fee associated with it. That's how my wife gives me my lunch money for school, and it works really well. And you also, if you're into that, you can track what your children are buying or not buying, and that's a neat little feature to have. So for high school breakfast, we're looking at doing a grab and go out in the high school area, so they wouldn't be coming in necessarily to the cafeteria in the morning to there. For the remote folks, we're looking at this point to kind of do it in bulk, a little bit like we did back last spring. So the purple group comes in Monday and Tuesday. That Tuesday when they go, we're going to send them home with meals for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That we have at the house, you have 3 meals, their lunches are set for the week. And for the Wednesday, Thursday folks, we'll send them with the meals home for Friday, Monday, Tuesday. They may eat them Saturday and Sunday, we know. That's in place. The biggest difference here is that last year, everyone's meal was subsidized. The state government, the federal government said, just feed everybody, everyone's getting the reimbursement rate. Right now, that is not the case. So we're working on how do we, some type of ordering system. So for families who are not a free and reduced family, who still want their children to get lunch and then to bring them home, so we can make those arrangements so we know which children we need to make meals for and which ones that are not. Of course, you don't have to get the meals here if you don't choose not to on the remote days. If that changes, you just need to contact Wendy and let her know, and so we can make those arrangements and make those changes from there. Still a bit of a work in progress. We are still working on it. We will get you more information as that information comes together for how we are going to kind of get that part of the feeding into place. For BOCES for lunch work right now, unless the schedule is different, Ms. Adams, it's the BOCES lunches will still work the same. They eat a little earlier, and then for the kids who are leaving in the afternoon, there'll be space for them to grab their lunch to eat a little earlier, and then they will go on their way to go to BOCES and do their day. And I believe when the other kids come back, they'll eat lunch when they return, as they do currently. We're just working around a couple other schedules. Ms. Adams, does that sound right?
Yes, yes, that is correct. We have lunch for our BOCES students will be around 10:30. They usually eat ahead of the other students, so they have their own lunch group that will fit in there. And then we usually only have a few students who are AM BOCES, and then they would fit into one of our other lunches. So that is correct.
Great, thank you. Tina, I didn't mean to skip you. Is the state helping with the cost of extra cleaning? That is no, they aren't. We do have some funding coming in through the CARES funding, which is COVID related. That's really federal money that came in from over the summer. So I guess there is some monies coming in to help, but the state budget is in dire straits. So that we don't anticipate, we're waiting on the federal government to hopefully chip in for schools for some funding there. But it does not look positive for budgets for the state. And, these additional costs that we're incurring, we're going to continue to incur those, though we are carefully paying attention to our budget. But at this point, other than the CARES money, which we've just recently said we can apply for, which we are, and that there isn't any extra money coming for this at this point. Carol, how are the elementary school kids' breakfast going to be? At this point, Ms. Vera, I'm not sure of that answer fully. They either may be going into the cafeteria. I think they're going into the cafeteria. Is that right, Ms. Vera?
No, we're still kind of talking about that one because I know
Okay.
they're doing like the grab and go for the high school. So we were trying to look into that for our students as well. We just, the concern was them congregating in the cafeteria. I think it's going to depend on our numbers.
Okay, great, thank you. Work in progress. Bottom line is that if your child needs a meal, you let us know. We will find, they will eat. We'll get them a lunch. We will get them a breakfast, regardless of their age, to make sure that's taken care of, whether it's home or remote. We'll find a way to make it happen. So please let us know. Yeah, it's a great question. Our kids allowed to bring their lunch from home? Yep, that's still in place. Same, same for breakfast from my seat. That's there, but yes, that can all still work the same as they do. If you'd like to donate supplies, I would call us first. If you're talking cleaning supplies, I would check with us first and see what you're talking about. There are several regulations that we are tied to. We all know that the best thing you could use on some of this stuff is a good gallon of bleach and a bleach mixture and go. And we only have limited access to do that. Some of the requirements in the green cleaning that we're required to do, all the environmentally friendly chemicals, have been relaxed a little, but we still have several guidelines of what chemicals we're allowed to use to clean up and for schools, not only for the kind of the harshness of the chemicals, but also students with sensitivities that are there. So thank you, thank you for the offer. We will give us a call and we will certainly talk about ways you can help if you're interested in doing that. And it's, again, thank you for the generosity and the thought of that. We appreciate it. The myschoolbucks.com was bought out by the K-12 paymentcenter.com, as I understand it. So it's still the same. It's a new company. It's still the same piece. I think, Benny, I haven't tried this myself personally. And when I say myself, I mean my wife has gone in and checked out the new email, the new login yet, but it's supposed to be the same thing. So you go in, I think you can just log in, and you just log in and go from there. Where I would probably recommend folks to go if they want to check out a little more about the K-12 Payment Center is if you go to the school website. And on the school website, you can click on the cafeteria page. There's a whole page of information now. It's a full website on just our school cafeteria, and it includes the information that is there that you can look to as well. For the donation of funds of general use, again, thank you for your generosity. I think we would certainly accept those. There are a couple other organizations in town too that can set and help for that. We've had some other donations. If you have some ideas, please give us a call and we can certainly talk about that yet. We're not quite the dire straits, but it is going to be a lot of work, and so we appreciate your thoughtfulness. Our existing funds that were under My School Bucks, will this be moved over for students? Yes, that is my understanding. That your account hasn't changed, just the company that owns it. So think about it that if you used to go to Community Bank and it got bought by Glens Falls Bank, now you have a Glens Falls Bank account. Same idea. It used to be My School Bucks, now it's K-12 Payment Center. That's in place. I'd encourage you to go through, go to the school website, check on the cafeteria page, and you can read up more on that. If you have any questions on that, call Wendy Carey, and she'll be able to walk you through everything and explain if there's anything you need to do. But my understanding is just a company change. Your money is still there. Anything else on meals? Okay, so let's talk technology a little bit. This is a little exciting to me because this is kind of the end of a very long project we've been working on the district for a while, and that's the Smart Bond funding that's in place. It was money that was put up a while ago that the state has to approve what we want to expend it on. When we put the committees together to look at that, there were some things we were looking to do. Chromebooks for kids, activity boards like smart boards or Promethean boards for teachers, and then later some security items, so cameras and those types of things for the school in general, because it was a generous sum. We just had our first plan approved. That was the amount of $209,000. So we are working as quickly as we can about getting as many Chromebooks in as we can, so we can start putting the one-to-one computing pieces into place. Now, when we say one-to-one, it basically means that we're going to look, and this will take some time to get there, that we're looking to eventually give every student a Chromebook that will be theirs to use during their time here at school. So for our high school students right now, we're at the beginning start, we'll be at the high school kids. We talked elementary, we're gonna work elementary too. But for that 7th through 12 population, we're looking to make sure every 7th through 12 student has a Chromebook. That 7th grader is gonna have that Chromebook from their 7th grade year all the way through their 12th grade year. So it's like we're assigning them a textbook and they get to use it the whole time they're here, and that will be theirs to use throughout their high school experience. Very exciting stuff. It's a great, it's going to be a point of pride for us here at the Salem Washington Academy. And the only thing that could make the timing better is if it were a month earlier, so we could have them in all the time for September. So for folks who are having device challenges in your home, where you were sharing multiple devices or we're using phones, there's a greater likelihood we are going to have a computer for you to use, and that is fantastic. With that, we've also done some investing in some teacher devices. When we were doing remote learning back in the spring, some of the challenges is our teachers had some challenges with connectivity in some cases, because connectivity around town isn't the best for teachers or parents or families or students too. So there were some connectivity issues and sometimes some device issues. So teachers will be able to do some of the remote learning here from school. So the connectivity won't be an issue, but we're also doing some investing in some devices that they'll need so they can do video conferences like this, or Zoom meetings, which is just another platform, or they can record videos to post onto their classroom page, or they can live stream their class through Chromecasting their lessons, and they can do more with audio and they can do more with video. So all of our teachers are going to have cameras and microphones that they can use with their computers. Several of our teachers are getting document cameras, so they're able to use those document cameras to show students kind of the work that they're doing. The ones we're looking at getting actually have a flexible arm on them, so teachers can use them as a camera. So actually, even in a science lab, you could bend that around and show off some things that have a little more flexibility, pun intended, for our teachers to be able to use in their classroom for their instruction. So we're getting some more peripheral pieces in so that virtual learning experience is a bit more robust and a little bit more rich for our students' experience during those remote learning times. These are some very beginning conversations. Some folks may know, or some folks may not know, is that there's been a group connected to the Rotary. Our community group that started off looking at the opioid crisis and bringing awareness there, and talking about how we can help get families help to resources and to recovery. And one of their main focuses is how they help engaging with students or children in the Salem community, so they know they have a community partner that helps them to want to be successful. There's a consortium group that's available that's made up of several different sectors of our community. So it's the business sector, and it's the churches are a sector, and the not-for-profit organizations like the Rotary Club is a sector. Well, the school is a sector too. So that they reached out to the school and said, what can we do to help? And I gave them a couple ideas, which we're going to actually be talking about here very soon. And one of those ideas was a discussion on Wi-Fi access and computer access. In talking with Sue Clary, with the town, we're talking about some ideas and the possibility of setting up places for there to be like computer labs in the village. So if families needed access to a computer and needed access to internet, they could go to these locations, and computer labs and computers and internet would be available to them for them to do their schoolwork, whether that was during the school day or whether that was during after hours, to help with the remote learning pieces. This is the very beginning type of conversations that's there, but just know it's happening. We did have some conversations about some of our other areas, like out in Shushan and up in Hebron. And so that'll be part of a bigger conversation. So it's not just necessarily here in Salem, but know that's one of the things that we're working on. About connectivity is always going to be a challenge for us because of our geography and our location. So we're looking to find other ways to be able to bring some of that connectivity out to where you are. So in those remote days, if you can't get here to school, to be able to, have your Chromebooks to resync, to pick up the new lesson work and materials in there, or you can't get to the library, then there may be a place closer to home to help you do that. More details to come, but in a very exciting community collaboration we're working on. We've also done some network changes, and we've done a lot of network changes over time that are now going to allow us to do some things. There was a question about, bring your own device. We are working on really what rules to follow. We already have a guest network set up, which will allow individuals with their own devices to connect to our network. You have to go through our filters, and you kind of have to follow the filter rules, which limits what you can look at. But we're going to have another network available. So if there are students who are going to use their own devices, that connectivity may be available to them. We are also, and notice over here in the map, in the parking lot by the bus garage, I got to put the X marks the spot. We are going to set up basically a Wi-Fi antenna about where that little red dot is. So about here. And we are going to broadcast a Wi-Fi signal into this parking lot. So if you need a Wi-Fi access, regardless of time, you're going to be able to drive into the school parking lot, have Wi-Fi access in this area. It's the school's Wi-Fi access. So the Chromebooks will be able to sync into there. So students can get to Wi-Fi to upload the new work, get their Chromebook synced to their accounts, to be able to turn in work if they need to do the research they might need to do, to email, if they aren't able to, if all the parking spots in front of the library are full, that are there. So another opportunity for network access that is coming. The other piece that we are doing is we are increasing our bandwidth. Think of bandwidth as a garden hose. The smaller diameter hose you have, the less water that can go through it. So the bigger the hose, the more water that comes through. So if you're looking to put out a house fire, your garden hose is not going to put out that house fire, but a two inch line and a fire truck is going to, because you can get more water through it. That's basically bandwidth. It's just we have a bigger hose to put more internet through it. So we're going to increase our bandwidth here. That will help with internet here for kids. It will also help with our instruction from our teachers and the streaming and all the more online remote learning we're doing to help with the connectivity and help with the video conferencing and help with those other things that we are doing here in the school. So a lot of technology work's been going on over the years, and now at a time where we desperately need it, it's going to be very advantageous to us. The big question mark on the screen tells me that I've made it through all my slides. Does anyone have any questions on the technology or anything else we talked about, or anything else from the days before? Would love to hear it. Chat screen is still open. If you are one of our call-in listeners, feel free to kind of unmute yourself and ask away. I'll give you a couple minutes to ask some questions. For the classes for live streamed or recorded for the remote learning, Ms. Vieira and or Ms. Adams, if I don't answer this well, feel free to jump in. That my understanding is a lot going to be is depending on the teacher and where their approach is going to be. I hear there's gonna be a lot of videos recorded. I hear there are some lessons gonna be recorded. And there may be some teachers who are planning streaming it at the time when the lesson is going on. So it may vary based on your teacher. Principals, anything to add, subtract?
For the high school, pretty much as Dr. Glover laid out, that will be the case. It will be a variety of different approaches depending on the teacher's kind of lesson plan for the day and what the type of class is. I will tell you that one of the things is we're looking at some of our different platforms to record and live stream, and we are definitely considerate of student privacy as well. So if we do record lessons, that we will be certain to keep those either on a private network, very secure within our system, but most likely it will not involve the student videos. In that case, we're working to have a process where it will just be the lesson that gets recorded and sent out. So there are a few different possibilities, but we do have a couple good web platforms that we'll be using that are a little bit of an improvement over Google Classroom. So it has a little more security to it as well.
Ms. Vieira, anything to add to that? I'm gonna steal Ms. Adams again in a second for the next question.
For us, it's going to be as much live streaming, where Miss Adams' schedule has a lot of pieces to it. Our individual classrooms have a lot of pieces that go into it. Where there's services being provided, there's a lot of movement. It's not as easy for a teacher to live stream, so there'll be more individual recordings that are done and uploaded to the site, but teachers will be available for individual small group remote learning after school and on Fridays. So that's more the vein that we are looking at rather than the live streaming, just way so much more going on within those elementary classrooms.
Okay, thank you. So for BOCES questions, Ms. Adams, you're on standby here. If BOCES is doing a day 1 and day 2, how's that going to work for the purple gold schedule? Go ahead, Ms. Adams. I'm just going to let you run with that one.
So hi, I think that you may have tuned in last night, and I can certainly go over the schedule more specifically with you when we have your child's BOCES schedule. But BOCES schedule is alternating every other day. So there will be some days that our student is strictly remote on the Salem side, but will be attending BOCES. However, with the transportation and the timing, they would always be able, if they have to do a check-in for that 83-minute block on block 2. So they miss a little bit of the end of block 2 in their morning classes on their in-person day. So they would also miss that on their remote day as well. Most of the teachers, I don't anticipate would expect students to be logged in for a full 83-minute block on the remote days anyway. Well, our teachers certainly know, and we identify our CTE students, so there will be some flexibility with that. And also BOCES is running classes on Friday. Friday, we're looking right now, we don't have all of the specifics in place and the details for what our Friday kind of plan is right now, but most likely it would not involve live instruction. It'd be more optional check-ins and maybe extra helps with teacher. But again, we haven't quite worked that out, but students will be expected, because it's an alternate day schedule at BOCES, students would go every other Friday and be expected to attend in person at BOCES. So our teachers certainly know and understand those joint responsibilities and will work with that. BOCES is right now making the list and assigning days in which group students will be in. And once we have those schedules, we will look at our individual BOCES students and try to maybe put a custom schedule again for each student and work through that with you. I'm just looking here. So for attendance, so I kind of answered both of those questions together. I'm not sure, Sarah, if that was fully answered your question, but again, there'll be attendance check-ins as opposed to really being present for the entire time. And that'll also occur with BOCES as well on their end. I'm sure they'll have a similar process. And BOCES will be doing, I see Tina Tercey added a comment in, once BOCES kind of gets their plan more fully developed, they're going to have some webinars as well, and we'll try to have a meeting of some sort, either individually or with the CT group, to kind of talk through that. We'll work that out. Same with the transportation. We'll make it work for everyone. And we're just happy that they're going to be able to go and be able to participate in the program.
Great, thanks, Ms. Adams. So for that, I want to just take this opportunity to thank everybody. First, thank Ms. Vieira and Ms. Adams for their work in the past 2 nights. Great information, and they are doing a wonderful job at trying to get everything ready for kids that are coming up in a very fluid situation. Very challenging, very difficult, and they are leading the way for what's best interest of your students. And I certainly appreciate that, along with all the teachers, faculty, staff, clerical support. There's a whole army here. We're small, but we're mighty, and we're working very hard on a daily basis to do the best we can to make sure your child is safe, that we maintain a healthy space, and that we are ready for the opening of school. For everyone, I certainly appreciate your patience with us and understanding how fluid the situation is, because it changes so quickly and so often, and being understanding of, having to hear my melodious tones or multiple phone calls from us on a weekly basis, because we just want to keep you up and informed. For those pieces, we'd rather have you over-informed in this information than under. Because it is fluid and is the health and safety of your children, and we take it as seriously as you do. To that end, please do not hesitate to continue to contact us. covidinfo@salemcsd.org. There is the blog spot that's available in the information's on the website. Our regular email addresses. You can call the school. Please continue with your feedback. Please continue with contacting us, so we know. If we don't know we think of a bunch, but you have provided us so much information over the past 3 days that we're going to have a better plan because of you. So thank you very much for that. Next week, we will have another one of these sessions. We need a couple days to put all this information together. So probably late next week, we'll have another session to just update everybody on what's going on, and then give you another opportunity to ask some questions. And information will be coming through Facebook and on the website here in the very near future. So again, thank you everyone so much for attending. I will stay on for a little bit if anyone has any other questions that they would like to ask. Other than that, have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. Yes, on the phone calls. The next one we will probably call you on. When these meetings came up, we had these 2 meetings already planned because if you remember, we were supposed to do a meeting the week prior, but we had technical difficulties. The WebEx platform crashed. It didn't have anything to do with us. Actually, the company had a problem. So rather than switch platforms and cause confusion, we just canceled and we did the video instead. So these 2 meetings were meant to be kind of the makeup for that meeting. And then the state said, you have to do more meetings. So for the next one coming up next week, we'll be sure to send out a reminder so everyone gets that on the phone.